Home Charlie, and thank you for coming. Your house is worth whatever it's worth, right? Whoever sells it. Wrong. If you want to find one of these guys, look out for those compassionate professionals. All estate agents are not the same. It is a massive mistake, and it's a mistake that will cost you money, not the agents. Your clients are free to just walk away.
All our clients tonight could watch this and say, take my house off the market.
You need to find the least terrible estate agent. But here's my advice on how to price when you're renegotiating. There's nothing else you need. If you've got this 150 quid, that's it, you can move in.
Oh, right. Oh.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Property Press Awards.
Good evening, everybody. I confess you catch me underprepared for this evening's live stream. 7 p.m. is a lot tighter than the usual 8 p.m. time, but I'm going to see what I can do. Just check that you can see everything and you can hear me okay. Who have we got saying hello? Hello, everyone on TikTok. We're doing Happy New Year, Captain Wrong and Tennis Man. I know this is alcohol-free, I'm afraid. Bex Blue, it's being all abstemious for January. How is everybody? David McKenzie, TA, Darren from Suffolk. Hi, guys. So, this is the bit I'm unprepared with. I wanted to have some really useful stats up for you on mortgage approvals, which is the topic of tonight's live stream. Got it. Right. Brilliant. Straight into it. This morning, the Bank of England announced November 2022 mortgage approvals, and they were 33% lower than the same month the previous year. Okay, and it's worth comparing November with a November because then you get the seasonal comparison. And yes, November is usually a quieter month. And to give you another comparison, so last November I think was just under 70,000, and today they reported that November was 46,000, I think. And the long term, with the 10-year average for monthly mortgage approvals is 67,000. So 10-year average, 67,000, November, 47,000. And this is, of course, the first official data we're getting that shows any reaction to the mini budget in September. Okay, so what I don't know if you guys remember, those of you who've been watching the channel since last September may remember that I remember saying to everyone, just don't do it until we know what the fallout from this is, because I remember thinking to myself, there's no way that Kwasi Kwarteng or Liz Truss are going to survive this for long, and so until they have been replaced with whatever's next, everything's going to go into sort of a hiatus, which is pretty much what happened. And I think this is the first evidence we're seeing of that. Okay, so this is, what are the effects? What does this mean? I just to give you a couple of the interesting stats. I contacted a good friend of mine who's a proper property market statistician and analyst, and he said that these figures were the lowest since April 2011, if you disregard the pandemic downward spike. And that April 2011 was actually as we emerged from the credit crunch and the last financial crisis, okay? But what he also told me was that the pre-COVID low was just 26,700 mortgage approvals, which was November 2008, okay? So that was November, not December. Now, what does this mean? I don't know what it means for sure, but this is my interpretation of what it means. And by all means, form your own interpretations, but this is my view. My view is that that was the first real shock to transactions at first-time buyer and mortgage buyer level. And as much of that reduction, that sudden drop in mortgage approvals, was caused by the mortgage lenders themselves pulling products off the shelf, backing out of current sort of not finalized offers, etc. And as it was from buyers wanting to pull out, because people who were at the point of buying at that point kind of wanted to get their deal over the line. They weren't suddenly pulling out of deals, not in large numbers anyway. So I think that the part of the reason for that was actually mortgage lenders themselves not knowing where they stood as far as government lending was and government debt was concerned, and the money markets and swap rates and all that kind of stuff. Lenders, if you remember, they pulled about 60% in total eventually of their products off the shelf. And that is why I think that we're going to see an even lower number in December, a sharply lower number in December, I think. My confidence level on that is like 65%. I'm not very confident of this, but 65% confidence that December's level is going to be lower than the November 46,000. I put a link below this video wherever I can, so you can go and see the story, read the story yourself about the exact details of the mortgage lending. But my thought that maybe want to do a live stream this evening was, well, what does this mean for sellers? What does this mean for prices? And what does this mean for transactions? And in particular, what does it mean for the standoff, the Mexican standoff I've been calling it, but today I came up with a new phrase for it, the standoff stalemate. Okay. The standoff between sellers and their unrealistically high prices and buyers with the new budgets they've got, especially mortgage funded buyers, because their budgets have been reduced by the lenders, not by their own finances, but by the lenders. What does it mean for this? Now, there could, of course, be two possible explanations for this sharp drop of mortgage approvals. One of them could be that it is just a blip. It is a shock reaction to the September mini budget, and that actually, if the industry commentators are to be believed, it's a blip. It'll come back, and normal figures will resume again. I don't think that's the case, but we won't know yet. November was down, December will be down. Until we see what January's mortgage approval figures are, which we won't get until early March, we're not going to know for sure. But the relevance to prices, and therefore the stalemate standoff, and therefore your ability to move, whether you're a buyer or a seller and a buyer, is this. If this sudden drop in mortgage lending, the quantity of mortgages approved, is actually going to last, well, then figures out yesterday show that more than 50% of last year's buyers were first-time buyers. It'll be the first evidence of the rug being pulled from underneath the baseline of the property market, which is the baseline being first-time buyers. Okay, because if mortgage approvals for buying properties have been massively reduced, well, that effectively is proof that the demand is dropping. Okay, is this? Oh, it doesn't matter. I think I'm slightly on the piss this evening, but it's nothing to do with that. It's all to do with the fact that I had to set up in such a rush this evening. So, what does this mean for prices right now? I am getting messages at the moment. Every single day I'm getting updates, private messages on Instagram and on Twitter, telling me about the experience of buyers and sellers, what they're happening right now. So what happened when they spoke to the estate agent today, and what do they think? What do I think they should do about it, and that kind of stuff, about putting offers in, and should they put an offer in even though it's 30% below the asking price, and all that kind of stuff. And the overwhelming feeling I'm getting across from all the messaging is, when a seller's going to wake up, and why have they got their head in the clouds? Why do they think they're going to have any chance of getting that? I mean, today's random example was a property that's on the market at 365 or 380,000. That, and today this buyer rang up the agent to talk about viewing it to make an offer, and was told that the buyer had already rejected an offer of 350,000, which is less than 10% below asking, and was absolutely not going to be accepting anything below that. So why are sellers so convinced that they can reject these offers and hold out and think that they're going to get better. Well, let's just explore the possibility that I'm completely wrong about house prices falling, and that there has just been a blip caused by the mini budget turmoil, and that certainty is returning, and that come the spring, to quote the words of one estate agent message I saw today, everything's going to return to normal. Now, okay, there's nothing normal about 2023 as far as I can tell, but let's just assume that's the case. There seem to be so many sellers out there clinging to that point of view, that fantasy, that belief, that point, whatever you want to call it, right? That they think that if they just hold out long enough, they're going to get the price they want. And it's no secret, I don't think that's the case. Now, I had another message this week from someone who is, for their job, they are involved in the home moving industry. So they're very well informed about the home moving industry, but they're not an estate agent, but they're involved in the industry in another way, and they are currently looking to upsize. And they sent me a message saying, because if you think about it, I've put the message up there saying, look, if you're upsizing, there's no hurry, because although the value of your property is dropping, so is the value of your new home likely to be as well. And therefore, if they're both dropping, you should be okay. You haven't got to worry about too much time. And in fact, over time, that drop might help you. And then someone said to me, well, hang on a second. It does matter. I'm an upsizer, he said. I want to sell my current house and upgrade it into a new house. But I can only do that if I get the price I want for my home. And I thought to myself, okay, this is really interesting, because here is a seller who is wise to what's happening in the property market, but who is sort of committed to this upsizing move that they want to make, but who is telling themselves that upsize is only possible if they get the price they want. And just to, we are humans, and all humans have this incredible capacity to formulate a reasoned argument that supports our point of view that we want. And I remember saying to this person, well, look, if you can only get what the market's going to give you, but it's likely that if you get less than you think you're going to get right now, you should be able to still afford the next place, because the price on that will have dropped as well. And then I thought, hang on a second, this is the problem that we've got, because there will be an element amongst upsizers out there for whom the falling house price story suits them when thinking about the property they're going to buy, but they will tell themselves that the price of the property that they're selling isn't falling as much because it's a lower price or something, and therefore they're kind of doing the maths in their head that tells them that they can afford this move, but only if they get the price they want for their property that they're selling now. Does that make sense? And so, ignoring the finances, what you've got is you've got some sellers who are, for perfectly understandable reasons, hoping that this upsize is possible. But as we know, hope is not a strategy. And they're putting the house on the market, and estate agents will accept. This brings me on to my next point, by the way, about estate agents and the pricing of properties. Estate agents will accept an instruction from someone who wants to sell and buy, because they know that in due course, there is a better than 50-50 chance that seller will eventually come to terms with reality and price their property for whatever they can get for it, so that they can move up to the next house. Right. So there are some sellers out there, and this is why it's important, if you're a buyer, you need to understand from the agent that's listing the property that you want to view, is this seller someone who's selling and then buying? Or is it a probate sale? What's the reason for selling? Is there an onward chain, effectively? Okay, because if there is an onward chain, then immediately you've got some explanation for why there might be some unrealistic expectations on price, which will be exacerbated perhaps by the unrealistic expectations of the sellers of the property that they're looking to buy. So it's like a vicious cycle of unrealism. and unrealistic expectations. But I wanted to come onto this topic about, how much are estate agents to blame for overpricing? Because there's a lot of people saying, oh, well, it's the agents, isn't it? Now, I really want to explain this to you so that you can understand the truth of the overvaluing problem as far as estate agents are concerned. Does it happen? Of course it happens. But it doesn't happen because the estate agents want the house price to go higher, because actually that makes their job harder. It happens because we, the sellers, tend to choose the most convincing agent that tells us our property is worth the most amount of money. Okay, so they only do that because we sellers actually go along with it and instruct the ones that convince us most convincingly that it is worth that higher price. But in doing so, I'm going to reveal something that some of you may not have heard before, but is common knowledge within the estate agency industry. In doing so, when an agent takes on a property at a price that they know is too high to sell and that they know isn't going to get sold at that price, what they've got to do is to hope that the seller will agree to lower the price before they can sell it. And this is the reason why you get these long-term sole agency contracts that lock you in for 3 or 4 or even 6 months. Okay. Those long-term contracts are only required when an agent knows that they've overvalued the property. All right. Because the only reason for the clause in a contract that says you cannot sell your home with any other agent but us for 6 months, the only purpose of that clause is to stop you from leaving that agent if you want to leave that agent. Now, why would that be the case? So it's the case because you get annoyed because you realize that you've been hoodwinked by that agent. They basically misled you into the price. You're now pissed off with them and you want to go somewhere else. Okay. But they stop that happening with this clause, which is why I say never sign that clause, because agents that don't overvalue so much have the confidence of not needing to lock you into them. Okay. So the higher the price of a property is overvalued, the harder it is for an agent to sell. And of course, they don't earn anything if they don't sell a property. So it is not in estate agents' interests. Truly, it is not in any estate agent's interests to put unrealistic prices onto a property. Okay. So when it does happen, it's either because they've had to agree to that price because the sellers insisted on it. If the agent wanted their business, then they had to agree to that price. And so they're reluctant to agree to it and they're waiting for the price to drop. Or, and this is the other thing that's happening right now in the market. I've just really it's taken a while for me to absorb this fact. There are a lot of good estate agents. And when I say good, I mean they are good at getting you moved out of one house into another. That's their job. Estate agents' job is not to be a forecaster of house prices. That is not their job. Everyone asks them what's happening to house prices, but actually they don't know any more than anyone else does, apart from their local patch. They'll know about individual properties, and they might have a feel of what's happening right now today at the coalface, but that doesn't give them the ability to forecast what's happening in the future of house prices. But yet everyone asks them, and I don't think they should, okay? I know agents who are very, very good at getting someone out of their property, getting it sold at the maximum possible price so they can move into their next one, who don't have a clue what's happening 6 months or a year from now in house prices, right? So understand that is possible. You can have a good estate agent, a professional, high customer service ethic, great standard estate agent who just doesn't know what house prices are going to do because that's not really their job. Their job is not to know what house prices are going to do. And so a lot of estate agents genuinely believed that house prices were not going to start falling and have been caught quite off guard by the fact that they have. And so they have listed properties at prices that they thought weren't that unrealistic. And it's taking time for that reality to sink in for the agent. Okay, it is unhelpful to you if you are a buyer to just blame estate agents for everything, right? If you let yourself do that, you're going to come across as antagonistic when you're talking to agents. And it's just, believe me, if you want to be a buyer who gets in with a chance of getting the early bargains, you want agents to like dealing with you. And so you got to just trust my judgment here, right? There's no point in blaming estate agents for house prices. It's just, I could talk about it until the cows come home. Estate agents are not responsible for what's happened to house prices, because an estate agent is going to set a price all they like. When the mortgage lender valuation comes along, they're going to down value it if it's too high, aren't they? It doesn't pay for estate agents to overvalue properties, except in the instance when they're convincing you, if you're the seller, that your house is worth more because they want your business. That is the only time it makes sense for an estate agent to overvalue your property. All right. So see, someone on TikTok here saying a majority need investigating for financial malpractice. That's just not true. There are, yes, I'm not saying that there aren't some estate agents who need investigating for financial malpractice, but not the majority of them. That's just not true. It's just not true. And I'm also not defending poor practice by estate agents. I'm impartially telling you, as someone who knows the industry and who wants to help movers, don't think that it pays for estate agents to price properties too highly. Right? It just doesn't. It actually harms them. If they take on properties that are overpriced, they can't sell, they just look like they're incompetent and they can't sell it. Right? And they earn nothing. An overpriced property just creates cost and work for estate agents and earns them zero. Right? Because most estate agents, almost all, are no sale, no fee estate agents. The only exception to that is the Purple Bricks and the other online agents who charge you an upfront fee. For them, yeah, they'll tell you whatever you want to hear on the value of your price, because they just want to get that fee for selling, upfront fee for listing your house, which they keep whether you sell it or not. But for no sale, no fee agents, it makes no sense whatsoever to overprice a house. Okay, it doesn't. It makes their job harder. It makes them less likely to earn money. But yes, I would agree with you on that, Coney Redner. If there was ever an industry that needs to be overhauled by technology of some sort, it's real estate. I agree with that. But every attempt to do that so far has failed. And my attempt to do that with Best Agent is the one I'm hoping is going to succeed, because Best Agent is actually impartial and sympathetic to both movers and agents, and is aiming to make it easier for both. So let's recap. Mortgage approvals in November dropped to a 13-year low. That is likely to drop lower in December. I had a chat with my mortgage guys today, by the way. And remember, if you are looking for a mortgage, go to the URL that's on the screen now, which is mhwc.co.uk/mortgage. Pop your details in there for my fantastic, trusted, handpicked mortgage guys. And I was asking them what they think is going to happen in January. And they said, their answer was, there's been a little bit of a pickup in activity, which you always get after Christmas, but it's too early to tell how busy January is going to be. They actually just said, we can't tell. We can't really tell. But they did also give me feedback that they said all of the Moving Home with Charlie viewers who've gone to them for mortgages have been better than usual quality leads, better informed, they said. Well, that's great. I mean, it's great feedback from me. I wanted to pass it on to you and to all of you and any of you who have there's quite a few hundred of you now that have contacted them through me. Thank you very much, because you're helping to support the channel by doing that. So my reading, which I say I'm about 2/3, about 65-70% confidence, is that we are going to be seeing lower mortgage approval numbers for a little while yet. All right, I'm not certain about this, and there will be a little bit of a blip effect based on the mini budget fallout, if you like. But then there were mortgage products taken off the shelf, and the affordability mortgages come down, and a lot of buyers are actually now sitting on their hands and not moving yet, waiting for prices to come down, or waiting for sellers to get more realistic with their prices. I mean, that's the other thing. If you are a seller watching this, there are people who want to buy your place, but they just can't afford it yet because you're still sticking to last year's prices, and we're in a new reality now. So those of you who need to sell and who think that waiting for the spring means you're going to get the price you want, in my opinion, you are gravely mistaken, and that you will wish you'd taken or considered more carefully the offers you're getting now, rather than just dismissing them out of hand, thinking you're going to get a higher offer in the spring. As more and more of the reality of what's happening in the housing market comes out in the news in January, February, and March, I think it's going to have a more and more negative effect on house prices. And if you're selling, that's going to make it ever harder for you. And I cannot stress strongly enough that, in my view, if you need to move because you're upsizing, or especially if you're downsizing, the sooner you do it, the better. Now, let's take some questions. Guys, if you've got questions, by the way, could you just type the word question at the start of your comment so that I can pick it out from all of the other ones? Picking here at random. Okay, here's the first one from Darren from Suffolk. Darren says, when will estate agents grow a pair and advise sellers they need to be realistic with their sales price? Merely listing a home in the hope of future price reductions wastes everyone's time. I agree with you. I would like to separate those agents into two categories. The ones who've locked people into a long-term contract, because they're wasting everyone's time, and the ones who are listing properties, but they haven't locked their sellers in. So why aren't they lowering prices? Okay. If you are an agent who's taken on a property and given what you genuinely believe to be good advice on the price, but you were wrong, you are going to risk losing that client when you phone them up to say, I'm sorry, I got the pricing wrong. It's too high and you need to lower it, right? And a lot of agents will be very apprehensive because the amount of time and effort it takes for an agent to win an instruction and get on the market, right? Losing an instruction to another agent is a very painful and expensive thing to happen to an agent. So they will be extremely hesitant to have that conversation. They want to have the conversation. And in fact, my advice to estate agents has been ring all of your clients. If they're not going to be realistic about price, then disinstruct yourself because they're a waste of your time. But it takes quite a lot of confidence for an agent to do that. But I think more and more of them will do, okay? That's my advice to agents. Ring around your clients, see which ones are going to be realistic on price, keep them on, get the price down, get it below the price to catch the falling market. Don't lower it a little bit and then keep having to lower it. And if you've got sellers who are being unrealistic on price, get them off your books. That's what I've said. So the answer to your question, Darren, about when will agents advise sellers they need to be realistic with their sales price, it's going to be a gradual process. The ones who've got a 6-month lock-in, they're in no hurry to do that. They've got their time to take. Others will do it sooner. It's going to be a very sort of broad spectrum on timings for that. The Brox on YouTube says, I keep seeing more and more modern auction method properties. Those are typically, but not always, properties that have failed to sell on the open market or they're desperate to sell very quickly. Matt asks, are agents still as strict towards the self-employed, especially in these harder times and stricter terms and criteria? I'm self-employed. Sorry, guys. It said I was having internet connection issues. I'm answering the question that's on screen now. It's not estate agents that decide whether you can borrow money or not. You've got to talk to mortgage brokers. So if you don't have a mortgage and you go to an estate agent and you're self-employed, then you are going to be less likely in their eyes to be viewed as a proceedable buyer, which is why, perhaps especially if you're self-employed, you need to contact a mortgage broker and get yourself a mortgage decision in principle from a broker so that when you do go to estate agents, they do consider you to be more proceedable and therefore more likely to show you properties. Hope that helps. Jason Boom on YouTube asks, has the period of mortgage rate portability after a completed sale ever been extended? I have 5 months left but cannot find a home. Wow. I don't know the answer to that question. If you have a broker, I'd ask your broker. I'm afraid I don't know the answer to that question. That is a mortgage question, and I'm not a mortgage expert. Okay, Matt, sorry, yes. I hope I answered your question about mortgage lenders. That's a really interesting question. Nikki Erit, I hope I've pronounced that correctly. Can a seller pass on their debt to me when they sell me the house if I buy cash? I don't think so, no. Because that would involve a change of title, and if they've got a mortgage outstanding on it, the mortgage holder will not allow them to change the title, and they can stop them from doing that. So no, I don't think that happened. Okay, J Lomax says, West Sussex / Hampshire. Not a lot of houses have been put on the market. When they are, it seems the prices are still not moving lower. Any thoughts on the area? Not so much on the specific area, although I do know West Sussex and Hampshire. I've got family who live in both of those places. I mean, those are relatively expensive dormitory regions for London commuters. But I will say this. I have not seen as much new property coming onto the market in January as I thought I would. And the Boxing Day bounce and all that kind of stuff, there was some traffic, but there wasn't as much. I mean, the best agent figures, we've seen about a 10% uplift in total property numbers just over the Christmas period, which is not nothing. That is a bump in properties. But what I think is going to happen is that actually, because so many sellers, including actually family, my own family, sort of extended family that I've seen recently over the Christmas period, some of whom are selling, they are on that spring is going to bring the buyers out and they're going to get a better price in the spring. And I'm very careful with family. I don't like advising family too bluntly. They haven't been watching my videos because family don't generally, except for Anne-Marie. Hi, Anne-Marie, if you're watching. I think the reluctance of sellers to admit that prices are falling or falling as fast as they are is going to be very stubborn to move. Because in their mind, the way I see it collectively is they're going, things always pick up in the spring. And if things pick up in the spring, that means I'll get a better price in the spring. So I'm going to wait for the spring. Which is not a rational argument, is it? I mean, yes, you get a pick up in activity in the spring in normal times, but we are not by any measure in normal times. There is almost nothing normal about this. And I've seen estate agents telling agents that the market's going to come back to normal. No, it's never going back to what it was. I don't think ever. But the other thing, so if you've got areas where there is a real shortage of property, especially rural property, and it's a high value area, they are definitely going to take longer. So the higher up the value chain you go, the longer the price falls are going to take. All right, it'll happen first at the first time buyer lower levels, and then gradually trickle up from there. In my view. Right, questions from any of you TikTok watchers got questions for me? I'm sorry if that's been freezing. I'm sorry, there seem to have internet connection problems tonight. Liam Jones asks, will we see people who have bought houses in the last 2 years enter negative equity? I believe that's already happening. What I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to my 4G network for TikTok. Hopefully that's better. Yeah, we are already seeing a little bit of negative equity. So yeah, if a buyer paid top whack with a 95% mortgage in the last year or two, there's a very good likelihood that they're going to be negative equity. But what's going to be different this time is that there is going to be a lot more what they call forbearance by the banks, saying before they actually evict people and repossess houses. Okay. And the government is trying to encourage a lot more patience on behalf of the banks so that people aren't evicted, because there's a real homelessness problem and the government doesn't want that to happen. And one of the reasons why, it's not just the prop up house prices, which the government does want to do, but it's also because homelessness costs the government huge amounts more money. Right? And there are lots of reasons that they don't want more people to be homeless, of course, but that's one of them. Right? It actually doesn't pay. And so if they can persuade the banks to just be more flexible and somehow find a way to not actually repossess homes, they're going to be trying to do that. Right. Question on YouTube. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce that name. Forgive me, I'm not even going to try and pronounce that name. The new house builder refuses to take an offer until I pass an affordability check with their preferred mortgage broker. Ooh. That is not legal. So is that legal? it depends whether or not you've got. So what they can say is that they can't accept an offer from you until they know that you've got a mortgage in principle, but they cannot force you to do it through their in-house one. That is illegal, right? If you've got a mortgage in principle from your own mortgage broker, which I recommend that you do, it's up to them whether they accept your offer or not. But the affordability check, I mean, this sounds to me like they're trying to get through the preferred mortgage broker, and that's not legal. That attitude is wrong. There's a name for it, the phrase for that. I can't remember what it's called, but it's mis-selling of some sort. But they will want to sell you the house. So if they think you can't afford it, they're going to want to accept an offer from you. Paddy O'Shaughnessy, that is not a question, that's a statement. So in terms of those of you who are buyers and you're waiting for a lot more property to come on the market, yeah, I have to say that I haven't seen the amount of property coming on that I expected. Because I really thought that sellers before Christmas, seeing the headlines in the news, would actually be wanting to get ahead of the almost certain house price drops that are coming. But, just talking to people over Christmas and New Year who I haven't seen for a while and who don't watch this channel, the general awareness of this amongst people is actually like, oh, is there a housing? I didn't know that. There is, the last couple of days there have been stories in the Financial Times and the Times about house price slump, house price crash, house price falls. And they've been the most strongly worded articles on that I've seen yet in those publications. I just think it's taking a lot longer than I thought it would for this cold, hard reality to filter out to sellers. So I think, you'll see a bit more property come on in January. But I'm now going to recalibrate my timing estimate of this. And you may not begin to see the large numbers of new properties now until the spring, but you'll definitely see a bump, an increase in properties coming to the market in the spring. I'm going to be watching the figures on Best Agent closely, and I'll keep you updated as closely as I can on the new instruction figures. And I can actually start to give you that regionally by county and that kind of stuff. So I will be watching you and regularly updating you on that. Guys, please, if you're new here, I cannot advise you on an individual property or an individual price or an individual town. I'm not a sort of all-knowing guru of every individual property in every individual town in the country. So please save your questions if it's how much should I pay for this property or how much would you value a property in this location? I mean, yeah, from a 2-line text message, how much? Yeah, I can't do it. Next question. Yeah, actually, Paddy, you're right. So Paddy says it always happens slowly and then all at once. That is true. And someone else I was talking to, so we're talking about like slowly sellers come to realization when no one's selling and more unsold stuff is sitting on the shelves. And then finally the shock and then it all comes down very, very quickly. And that's when you get the actual crash. And so I suppose I should also update I thought prices would be sliding the first half of this year. It's more likely to be the second half until the majority of sellers wake up. So McDeegs asks, will we see a smaller drop in house prices in smaller towns with universities? Well, traditionally, towns and cities with a large student presence do fare better in terms of house prices not falling so far during downturns. But I still think that there are going to be differences this time because there are going to be a lot of buy-to-let and student landlords selling up as well because of the changes in the law. So it's maybe not as reliable as usual that those towns will be less affected. But yes, it's a not unreasonable assumption that university towns won't have price falls as far as other towns. Martin Berman on TikTok asks, any guess on when house prices will bottom out? It certainly won't be this year. It'll be 2024 at the earliest. And exactly, I mean, I've been saying sort of mid 2024, but again, recalibrating how slowly sellers are waking up It might be later in 2024. But for the people who are reading the news and watching the news, there is a sort of dawning realization that maybe the market is changing, maybe it has changed. So I'm as confident as ever that what I've been predicting will happen. But like my friend Alex, the quant guy, says, it's never as quick as you think it is going to be or should be. It always happens more slowly. Any more questions from you TikTok guys? I get a lot of questions about shared ownership. I'm not a shared ownership. I'm not knowledgeable on shared ownership, but I do think it's inherently more risky just based on the fact that there are more parties involved and therefore more friction. So your freedom to move is lower than if you are not in a shared. It doesn't mean you shouldn't buy one. TA asks a question: do you think the crash will be worse than 2008? Yes, I do. Considerably worse. But I think that's partly because I think the wider economic situation is going to be worse. 2008 was a banking crisis more than it was a recession as such. I know there was a recession, but it was a banking crisis, and we all saw the shock of that banking crisis. This is very different this time around. I think it's going to last a lot longer. Yes, I am working on a Best Agent app. Sorry, do you mean a native app for the mobile? No, not right now. We don't have a native app or an iOS or Android app for Best Agent yet. That will come in due course, but just not yet. Not ready for that at this point. Okay, so I think I get so many questions about new build. Here's the question: are large new build developers likely to drop their house prices to reflect the drop in the market, or hold firm and offer incentives instead? So this is what goes on behind the closed doors in those businesses that are in the business and therefore very experienced at building and selling houses. They know that they're selling people's dreams, right? And to first-time buyers and the under-informed, when you go to them and say, hey, look, will you accept an offer of 10% below your asking price? You've just made it very easy for them to say no. Because you already sound like if they don't, then they're going to pay the full price because you want the property. If you are offering on new build properties, understand that it is their job and that they are professionals at making you believe that you will have to pay the price that they want. Okay? That's their job, and they will not stop doing that ever. They're never ever going to turn around and go, oh, do you know what, guys? The market's dropping a bit, so yeah, we're going to take 20% off. They might say that to take 3% off and make you think that you've had an absolute bargain when they should be taking 15, 20% off. But eventually, they must sell all of their houses. They must. They've got no choice. They cannot sit there with empty houses unless they decide to go into renting them out. But I don't think that happens. So you just got to follow the guidance that I give, which is work out what that home is worth to you and what you're comfortable offering. Disregard the asking price. Disregard their guff. In this case, it's new developers guff, not agent guff. But just disregard the guff. Formulate your own offer price and send it to them by email and say, hey, look, I understand you may not want it. But when you're offering on a property, whether it's a new build or not, there are only ever one of two scenarios. Either they've got other people offering, or they haven't. If they've got other people offering and your offer is lower than other people, then you're not going to get anywhere. But if they haven't got anyone else offering and you're the only offer, then they're likely to take you more seriously. I mean, they might still, again, if your offer's too low for them for whatever reason, if it's a seller that can't sell at that price, they might still just say no. And remember, you won't get a yes every time. In fact, you'll probably only get a yes one time in 10. Okay, but when you are a first time and therefore by definition an uninitiated buyer of property, and you're dealing with people who do it all day every day for a living, they are going to make you feel like you've got no choice but to pay the price they want. But that's not the case. They're going to let you think that there's lots of other competition, and if you don't snap it up, somebody else will. Never let them intimidate you into overpaying or paying more than you're comfortable paying, right? The values are falling. What they will do, understandably, is that they will keep on trying to get as high prices as they can for as long as they can. Don't be surprised and don't be frustrated. That's them doing their job. And if you were them, or if you were selling a house, you'd do the same, right? It's better to understand that. I mean, it is frustrating when you get sellers who are clearly clinging to fantasy and there's just no chance. And that is happening. I can see that happening a lot. Matthew Baker asks, is there any single event such as an end to the war that will change the market? Right. Well, depends on what you mean by change. Okay, let's assume that you mean, is there a single event that will stop the market falling and put house prices back up? I honestly don't think there is. I think that there are events that could limit the downside. I think there are events that could actually increase the downside as well. I think, the housing market is, this reminds me, by the way, someone on YouTube commented saying, Charlie, what's your personal situation? Are you doing these videos just because you're trying to get a property cheap? I love the implication that somehow my channel on its own is going to move the market. That's brilliant. No, even the government can't move the market without immense intervention or immense, measures, and even then they only influence it, but they can't actually control it. So, no, I think that if there was a shock election called, I think that market would go into hiatus and people would want to new transactions would stop until the election had happened. And I don't rule that out this year, by the way. I don't rule out an unexpected early election. It's not impossible. If the war in Ukraine ends sooner rather than later, and that brings down energy prices faster than expected, that could have a positive effect on prices, as in an upward effect, or it could have a positive effect. You know what I mean? It could soften the falls. I think that if the spectre of a China-Taiwan conflict grows and becomes more likely, that could have a downward effect on our economy and on the housing market. But I don't think there's any single event that could change the market. No, I don't think so. Okay. As a first, okay, I've got a question on TikTok from Chris M. As a first-time buyer looking to buy with my partner in a year, what should I try to prepare for with these rates? If you're looking to buy in a year, I don't know why it's a year. Is it because you're committed to stay where you are now for a year, or is it because a year times when you think it's going to be more affordable? I don't know. But what you can do during that time is to just make sure that you get very, very familiar with the transactions happening in the area that you want to buy during the course of that year. I mean, on a property by property basis, you should be looking at all the properties that you might be thinking of buying yourself and seeing when they come to market and seeing, did they sell and how much did they sell for? You won't know until the land registry details come out, but that's what I'd be doing, as well as talking to a mortgage broker well in advance. Get a mortgage broker to find out what your likely budget's going to be as a mortgage. Okay. As far as interest rates go, I don't have a strong view. I think we might be at the new normal for interest rates. I don't see them coming down. I can see them going up a little bit further if the bank base rate increases. I don't really know. It's weird. It all depends on inflation. And today there was negative news on inflation. We had food price inflation at 15% or something, which is just not going to help. Alex Whitaker, when do I expect the asking prices in Rightmove to reflect the situation in regards to prices falling? Well, don't forget, a lot of sellers might sell at 15 or 20% below their asking prices published on Rightmove without ever changing the price on Rightmove. So, I don't know. There's a massive disconnect between Rightmove asking prices and real prices. Anyway, there's I can't remember. It's between 50 and 100 grand difference between the average asking price on Rightmove and the average transaction price. So you can read into that what you will. But I think I don't think you're going to start to see significant falls in asking prices until, I'm amazed. I think people should be dropping their prices now if they want to sell. But in the late spring, early summer, if they're not falling by then, I'd be very, very surprised. Yeah, there are quite a lot of price reductions happening. Okay, right, guys. I'm going to call it. That's a lot longer than I thought I was going to be this evening. Thank you very much for joining. Remember, if you don't have a mortgage broker and you'd like one, then please do try my guys, my hand-picked mortgage team. I'm going to be doing a live stream, a live Q&A with the mortgage brokers soon. I'll let you know in a few days exactly what date that's going to be. Otherwise, thank you for watching. If you're a buyer, continue with your being patient, but remember to offer if you find something you like, but only what you're comfortable. Just buy now if you want to, just don't overpay. And if you're a seller and you need to sell, I would be asking yourself, if you're a seller watching me thinking, Charlie doesn't know what he's talking about, prices are going to be falling in sell my house. The question I would ask myself is, why do I think that? Is that because of what I want to think? Or is that because that's what I actually think is going to happen? I really think if you're a seller, you need to try and be brutally honest with yourself about your expectations of price. Paddy says, remember that China is almost certainly going to invade Taiwan. I hope you're wrong about that, Paddy, but I fear you might not be wrong. Guys, you're all awesome. Thank you very much. Remember, if you know friends or family who are moving home and they don't know about moving home with Charlie, please put them on to me. I'd really appreciate that. And let's get the word spread. Perhaps, the faster this channel grows, the faster sellers might get realistic. I did a survey of my followers, and 40% of you are tenants actively seeking to buy, and only 20% of you are sellers currently. All right, so I've got far more buyers watching the channel than I have sellers. Maybe we need to get more sellers watching this channel. All right, guys, and I'm going to, anything you can do to support the channel and spread the word, I think is going to help everybody get the news out there. Guys, have a great night. Sleep well. Stay safe. And I'll see you on the next one. Bye.